consuming all this DeFi services by the producers, and like such as different kind of bridges and cross-chain messaging solutions.
Perfect. Thank you for that input. Dejun, do you have something that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah. I think for the future decentralized finance, the cross-chain would be a very key component and a very important infrastructure for us. Especially when we see multiple different chains, they emerge. And after Avalanche, other layer 2 blockchains, and recently we hear about SUI and other very well-known new public blockchains. I think one of the most important thing is the connectivity, which means, those different public blockchains, they can interact with each other, and the aggregation can be aggregated to support one business purpose. And the messages, they can route to different public blockchains to trigger the different smart contracts. So I think that the connectivity is always the major theme, starting from the internet age, because internet is about connectivity, and the blockchain and the cryptos, they are also siloed in value today, just like the traditional finance. But what we need to do is to connect them together to make sure the value can flow from one chain to another freely in a very short period of time. Today, our cross-chain speed is about 1 or 2 minutes. Even if you are trying to cross-chain some assets from a non-EVM compatible chain to another public blockchain, or even you want to make the transfer like from multiple different chains into one chain, the speed is about 1 to 2 minutes. So speed is very important. And the second is the aggregation of the liquidity, because the DeFi is everything about the liquidity. If we look at the DeFi components today, or the DeFi protocols today, we hear about SushiSwap, we hear about Compound, the loan protocols, but the essence of all of those DeFi protocols is about the liquidity. So I think we need to focus on the liquidity first. And today, Chainge has aggregated about $70 billion value of liquidity in one place. When users, they want to swap from token A to token B, we can pull the liquidity from all of those liquidity on different chains in different DApps, and then we can serve this type of high premium service and provide the smallest slippage when users want to use it. Thank you.
Absolutely perfect. Steve, I hear you'd like to jump in. Now, I want to remind all our panelists, if there is any time you want to jump in and give your thoughts on something, please feel free. You can cut me off as I'm about to call on somebody. So,
thanks for that. I think DJ brings up a very valid points there, because dBridge as an infrastructure provider, as a bridge within the ecosystem, like we have a pretty good pulse of the ecosystem, how it's moving, how it's trending, how it's developing. So we saw a demand for first starting off with asset bridging earlier in 2021, and then as more projects came in with their multi-chain ambitions to expand, starting with fungibles, and then we saw a spike in requests for NFTs, and then but more recently it's been a lot more about interoperability. We see about maybe 5% of the projects requesting specifically supporting that, and we're blown away by sort of some of the creativity as well as the use cases that we're seeing. So for example, one of the key NFT projects that we're working with at the moment, the integration they're looking at is allowing their NFT marketplaces to basically lock up their NFTs on one chain and borrow against that on another chain, like on BNB. Or we're also seeing DEXs that allow users to basically swap across multiple chains from just one chain. And there's a project called ChainHub that we've incubated that's doing that. So the use case from like yield aggregators, we're also seeing where they're managing multiple blockchain vaults from a single chain. And so it's sort of like it amazes us sort of seeing the spectrum of use cases. So that's sort of our view as an infrastructure provider, and I think is very encouraging. Thanks.
Yeah, I help jump in here. So, with Axelar, we're seeing the exact same thing that Steve is saying. The question is really no longer like, do we want to build cross-chain use cases, cross-chain functionality? It's saying, everyone's saying we do, but who should we use? And is this solution secure, right? And, with Axelar, one of the reasons why we're seeing so many projects building on top of us is people really appreciate the fact that we are very decentralized. And I think it also helps that we are IBC compatible and there is a lot of momentum towards the Cosmos ecosystem. But, just like Steve mentioned, with message passing, the ability to now pass instructions as well as an asset with an asset, this opens a whole new world of possibilities, right? You're able to now build these true cross-chain applications that, can combine multiple functionalities together to massively improve user experience as well.
And just to add really quickly, like all the speakers raised really great point, but what I've seen in the interoperability space is that all the use cases are kind of split up into two categories. And like most of the bridging technologies and interoperability protocols are solving two different issues. One is like how to efficiently transfer value or liquidity, and how to aggregate liquidity across different chains. And other direction is like how to transfer data and in seamless cross-chain calls between. And what we are focused on in deBridge is to enable very secure and efficient transfers of value and messages simultaneously. Because we really think that like cross-chain liquidity transfer is not enough. Because whenever users or protocols are moving liquidity from chain A to chain B, they got to do something with liquidity, like provide liquidity into the protocol or open position at perpetual market, or like that can be any complex cross-chain interaction. And many existing interoperability protocols do not allow to perform like complex transactions. And because like the message that is passed between chains should encode arbitrary set of transaction calls. And this is like one of the areas that we kind of open in deBridge to let any protocols to perform any complex logic. Because let's say, my bet is that like interoperability is needed for money Legos, and money Lego is like one of the most powerful concepts of DeFi. And we've seen many good money Legos that were built within one specific chain, like Curve and Convex, or Aave and DAI. But so far, we haven't seen money Legos built on a cross-chain scale. That's why we need to have interoperability layer that allows to transfer liquidity and message simultaneously. And we see like first attempts from teams who are trying to innovate and build like the very first cross-chain applications and cross-chain protocols. And I think that in the very near future, we'll see more and more use cases where developers will combine DeFi protocols on a cross-chain scale. Because let's say when we have like decentralized stablecoin, the stablecoin may open up position at perpetual market in order to maintain its back. But if we have interoperability layer, that protocol may choose what perpetual market will provide the better funding, and this will enable like new capital efficiency. And I'm looking forward to seeing like all the cross-chain protocols and applications that we build within the next year, utilizing any of the interoperability layers that we have so far.
Excellent. Thank you, Nick. Dima, do either of you have anything to input?
I would say that so from what we have heard already, one thing that I want to also emphasize is that the experience of the end user is the ultimate goal here, because what taught me in particular, like the boom of ISO projects and back to 2016, 17, and so on and so forth. Yes, everybody talks about innovation, about cross-chain, about multi-chain, whatever. But the idea is to make the experience when you're working with different DeFi protocols as smooth as working with, I don't know, food delivery service or ride-hailing service that we have in Web2. So idea is that not to somehow cannibalize on the experience, on the user experience while fostering innovation. So that's what in particular, especially with Alex and Jason.
Well, our solution is mainly built about NFTs and SFTs. We're not building a fungible token bridge, so we're not really about so much DeFi. But basically, without NFTs and SFTs, you don't have goods to sell. So basically, fungible tokens is like money in the crypto world, and NFTs and SFTs are goods that you can buy and sell. And it's very sad that many people use NFTs and SFTs just as tools for speculation, which is not the purpose of those tokens. The purpose is instant registration of ownership or passing ownership from one user to another in a decentralized way. So in a way, what we are building is the market for moving ownership between chains and acquiring new user bases on different chains, on different protocols. So I think this accompanies everything that all the other good projects that are present here are doing. And this is something that the future of crypto industry cannot live without. So it's great that you can have so many currencies, but then you have to buy some goods for those currencies. And this is what we are concentrating at.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for your input. I wholeheartedly agree with you all. I think that the future of DeFi is going to be very complicated to build all of this, right? That's one of the reasons why at Rubic we're leveraging all your guys' hard work and kind of putting it together in a comprehensive package that is forward-facing to users for different applications. No one person can hope to build everything, and every single one of your projects is working on some unique aspect of the industry, and we're so proud to be working with all of you guys. You guys are doing some excellent work out there, and thank you for your insights on that. Let's move on to the next question here. Now, this is with regard to interoperability for dApps, for decentralized applications. What do you guys see as the prominent use cases, and who would you consider to be like major providers of this? Who do you see stepping up? Do you see Web2 companies moving into Web3, some big hitters? Do you see it being some of these up and coming projects during this next bull run that will really make an impact on the industry? How do you guys see the interoperability for cross-chain affecting decentralized applications?
Yeah, I think I recently had a call with one of the teams behind Aptos and Sui, and we discussed that potentially what we can see in the emerging space of Web3 is what actually fostered first invasion of Web2, when all different cloud infrastructure merged. And so I believe that once we have this totally interconnected cross-chain message passing and actual value transferring enabled in a way how clouds working, I mean, AWS cloud or Google clouds, etc., enabling all those services like Facebook, etc. Then we can see the truly uprise in the applications of different projects that could go beyond financial services. And that's the second point I want to emphasize, is that I really believe that moving beyond financial services is the key to somehow, let's say, transfer the attention of the user from just like borrowing, from trading, going ups, downs in the market, etc., but into making more inclusive environment, especially for those unbanked societies and populations in emerging countries like Africa and a few more. Because I believe you're probably aware that over 2 billion of people don't have a bank account because they don't have ID, no passport, no something else. in Latin America, people, for many reasons, there is economist, his name is Aristotle, and he has a book about this. It's called Quest of Capital. And the idea is that people can actually lend, people could have been lend their property or borrow against it or something, but they don't have this right structured in a proper way. And that's where, so in the first approximation, it will be all about financial services still. But when we will see when all the, let's say, content on the internet is structured in some way or another, like NFT, when we see rights, digital identity, and etc., circulating through different networks seamlessly without being tied to a specific network, like EVM compatible or not EVM compatible, then I believe that at least I expect that this is what we could see during the next bull run, the uprise of such services. And we, together with all those present from this alliance call, I would say we are somehow contributing to this, and that's really inspiring. That's what keeps me wake up every day, honestly.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
yeah, go ahead, Jason.
sorry, Alex. Yeah, I agree with Nick, right? What gets me really excited about are these like real life use cases that's coming into play. You know, one of the conversations I had just a few days ago was with checkout.com and how our Axelar's cross-chain infrastructure can actually support their new crypto payment processing product, right? If you think about, you know, things like crypto payment processing, one of the major barriers up to today is people like might only have a certain asset on one chain and they might not have like gas to pay for it on one chain. But when you have like an interoperability solution, you layer on some gas services that allow people to only pay gas at the source chain, or you can like have people pre-fund gas receivers so they can like not have to pay any gas. Now you can have a really seamless like crypto payment processing product where a user can check out not just like USDC on one chain, but really like any token on any chain, and they might not even have to pay gas, right? And that is super exciting and really will open up the possibilities for various kind of e-commerce marketplaces that would be interested in having this kind of product.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, I wanted to suggest to think together, like, how powerful the cross-chain infrastructure can be, and like what layers or what participants of the Web3 economy will be influenced by the decentralized interoperability layers. Because, like, from the protocol perspective, I think the best advantage of having the decentralized interoperability that all protocols become globally accessible. Because before we saw that like smart contracts and projects had to fork themselves and deploy across different chains just in order to tap into user base of other blockchain ecosystems. But having truly decentralized and secure interoperability layer, the protocol can become globally accessible. I can have like the smart contract to be deployed on one chain, let's say Polygon, and then users and protocols from all other chains can easily interact with my protocol in Polygon. And that also impacts users a lot, especially in terms of user experience, because I really think that in the near future, like the users will not need to switch wallets, switch networks. I can use a Phantom wallet, and I'm used to be like a Solana user, right? But I still, from my personal like Phantom wallet, I can still interact with any protocol in Polygon or any protocol in Arbitrum without the need to switch between Phantom and MetaMask. I just send a transaction to the smart contract of the bridge or interoperability layer in Solana, and then my transaction gets automatically executed by infrastructure in Polygon. And because like in Web2 world, whenever we use the web application, we don't need to switch hosting providers, right? And we never think about like whether it's Amazon Web Services or Hasner. We just use internet or web applications. And that's some kind of user experience that we will see in the very near future and Web3 as well, because users will not need to know about bridges at all. Users will just interact with the dApp they want to interact with from any wallet or from any chain where they have gas token. That's a bit from my side.
Well, I would say like Alex, you don't have to wait very long. In 20 days, we're gonna launch that for you, at least at Sushi. So all the sushi products across all the chains that we support on cross chain. will be accessible from each other's chain. So you just select the chain and the token and the operation, and that's it. You hit one click, and it does the bridging, swapping, zapping, underlying everything for you on that chain. And
Yeah.
but yeah, on the contrary, as a developer of like things that you guys make, there's sometimes also a UX lag when it comes to building application natively cross-chain. So a lot of application also relies upon momentary spontaneous. So there can be some things that you actually can't do in a cross-chain fashion because that involves some amount of delay, right? So given an example of Polygon, generally, like you have to wait like 50, 100 blocks for that. So there might be some operations on the other chain that you can't do it. So I still feel there are some limitations that cross-chain would go. It's not like like a silver bullet of just deploying like sushi on one chain and accessing liquidity globally. And there are, if that actually happens, that also breaks some of the mechanism. Let's say on liquidations, right? If you have to like flash load based liquidations, you couldn't do it because cross-chain swaps kind of applications or messaging, it's not instant. It's just like traveling from a different country involves cost and time. It's not like you can easily arbitrage, let's say something like gold from different countries, because you can travel. It does involve some kind of delay and cost that also users and the dApp developers have to take care of.
And I hope that Sushi will be really good trendsetter and will be showing a good example for all other protocols on how the dApp can become globally accessible. And hopefully all other protocols will reach out to all of us and start using the interoperability layers that we all are building.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, well that is definitely going to be us for sure.
Yeah.
We're, like I said, we're very happy to kind of leverage all of the amazing updates that you guys are bringing to the industry with regards to interoperability. I mean, we're just really focused on making it easy for users to interact with what you guys are building. So it's very, very exciting.
Yeah. So if I can add, Collin, I think I think you brought up an interesting question about seeing, are there, use cases, or I should say communities or users coming over to the Web3 space. We're seeing this firsthand with brands that you would recognize with social media companies, whether they're based in Asia. But more interestingly, we've been seeing game companies that would you recognize from playing on PlayStation or your Nintendo Switch, where some of these game companies with over 100 million in annual revenue that are already exploring how do they get into the NFT space, things like that. And it's interesting because they come with this affinity towards a specific geographic region of the world. So if it's like Asia, there's a specific number of chains that they're already sort of very interested in, so on and so forth. But quickly, once they sort of establish how this thing works, or if they're further down the line in the development, they're already looking at and understanding the sort of the multi-chain ambition, right? So how do they go from point A to B? How do we transfer their NFTs so there's a utility there? So it's interesting to see the transition, and I think you will see more of this news coming forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a big proponent that games are really going to drive adoption of Web3. You saw gaming drive adoption in Web2 with social media. I've said before, I knew people who would have never signed up for Facebook, but they were brought into it because of Farmville, right? So like gaming is very powerful. Working towards tangible goals is a very powerful tool, especially when you wrap it up in a neat package that kind of gets that dopamine hit for people.
That's right.
It's not too dissimilar from gaming. So I do see gaming companies playing a huge role, and with the adoption of NFTs for microtransactions and in-game items and in-game currency and things like that, having a huge network effect on drawing new people into the industry. Now, talking about cross-chain and integrating it into decentralized applications, what are the pros and cons that you guys see in your development in this regard? Could you give us some insight on the pros and cons?
I can go first. One of the things we're really excited about here is, the next generation of like cross-chain wallets being like a super app, similar to like a WeChat or Revolut experience, where you can have integrate a lot of these cross-chain apps where no any other applications can just trust that right within the wallet, you can, swap from any token to anything, take out a loan on one chain, and do all of those like DeFi application that you're only used to doing today on single chain, but right within the wallet. And as a user, you never actually even have to leave the wallet, and it can access the benefits of all of Web3 right in one place.
Yeah, I think wallets and having cross-chain functionality natively integrated into it is absolutely going to be key for mass adoption. I've said before, people don't really need to know how something works; they just need to know how to use it. So making it accessible for grandma or somebody to just download it really easily off of their smartphone and really jump into this new Web3 environment is going to be absolutely key. Anyone else would like to weigh in? Steve?
I would like to also say that the thing with wallets is especially important because I believe that everybody see that wallets, like digital wallets, becomes sort of ultimate digital identity person, and with like it replaces credit history of your interactions with different DeFi protocols, etc., etc. And it's really let's say unifying and like SMS technology or like email technology, instead of being tied to specific IDs, like everybody has Apple ID or either, I don't know, Google ID or whatever. Instead of being like tied to the proprietary proprietary companies, you have a unified thing to access any service, at least in the future, because we're still in development mode for this.
Yeah, that's. Are you wrapped up, or did your mic cut out? There you go.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, your mic cut out for a minute. Could you repeat that?
Yes. I was just saying that I believe that wallets is the crucial infrastructure for the adoption because it replaces proprietary identities like Apple ID and some others, so it becomes a unified digital identity for users. For the challenge, because the question was also about challenges that we face while developing what we do, I would say that Symbiosis, we see, let's say, lots of potentials, like adding more networks simultaneously, like adding each network per week or something, especially even compatible, because it's not the case. It's not technically like too hard for us to add and as many as we can. But we need to set priorities here. Plus, given some emerging networks, we need to take care about security first. So I would say that we are pretty cautious. So the challenge is that we are being pretty cautious because bridges and solutions like ours, like interchain, general person data protocols, DEXs, and so on and so forth, being hacked every single week. And so we're trying just to be as cautious as we can, potentially. And I believe the rest here in our room chat today is also trying to be as cautious as potentially we can.
Cool. For us, the challenge has been, I think everyone could probably agree that this entire space moves extremely fast. So it's sort of like keeping up with the needs of the ecosystem, right? And then I think first starting out with the fungible ERC20, then the 721 NFT, and as more projects requested to go interchain native, there's general message and things like that to be interoperable. So I think the challenge is like you can't go to Amazon and just buy any book that explains how to do this. It's like, you have some extremely smart people working in this space to make this work. And by the time you write an article about it, it's already late, right? By 2 visions or something like that. So our challenge as an interoperability player is that we want to be able to enable every node to connect to another node, because whether it's going to be, transferring assets, fungibles, NFTs, or passing messages, that's the goal that we have. And we started with to streamline these things, and then we started with supporting EVM compatible chains first. And now that as other chains that are non-EVM become growing, we want to be able to support that. So it's sort of like whether we learn another language to adapt to this and to help scale, or to keep pace with it, and at the same time spending a considerable amount of our time in doing the research and development has been a really fun thing to watch, to say the least. But yeah, it's you never know what the next 6 months or next year of the development will come. So yeah, that's our view as a bridge provider, so to speak.
Speaking about cons, if I may put a word here, because we bridge so many non-EVM chains, the standards of everything can be very different from, again, everything we got used to seeing in the EVM ecosystem. Starting from the way tokens are minted. For example, they can be minted outside smart contracts, they can be minted directly in the user's account, or they can be minted in assets which are neither user accounts nor contracts. And you also have to support all those variations and all those standards. And some of the chains, they have such peculiarities that other chains don't even think about. And also, it's a challenge how to transfer this without violating the rules of the chains you're sending from. For example, there's a blockchain called Secret.network, which has secret NFTs, if you heard about this. Not every person immediately understand why you would even want to have a secret NFT. Like, what's the use? How would you sell a secret NFT on a marketplace if nobody can see it? But like I told you, NFTs is not just a tool for speculation. It's a tool for instant securing something. For example, imagine a government starts issuing IDs or licenses or patents to its citizens, and everybody has access to this information. Everybody on the planet. Probably it's not that secure as everybody would like it to be. So on Secret.network, you can mint NFTs that are only visible to certain entities, like to the issuer and to the owner. And nobody else can view this asset without the permission of one of the two. And then the question is, because there's no such standard on other chains, how do you even transfer this NFT without violating this secrecy? Or do you have to create the same setup on another chain and transfer to a specific contract that preserves this secrecy? Well, these are the challenges that we meet on our way. And I think it's also important to understand that the more globalized this thing becomes, the more standardized everything should become for compatibility between protocols. And it doesn't matter in what language it's written in, Rust and E++, on Solidity, or even Move. There's a blockchain that is now emerging, and it will be written in Move. You still have to be compatible with everyone else if you want to join this sort of worldwide trade of assets. So this is what I wanted to say.
Yeah. In my opinion, like while developing, I generally face two kind of cons or difficulties, because let's say, to start with, how the development is actually structured, right? Like, since there hasn't been any popular cross-chain native dApp integrations, currently all the people are kind of experimenting on how we should try to do it. A popular model is this master slave, or the root, or like the sub or the child model, where you generally have like a contract maintaining a global state on one of these chains, and rest of the chains and contracts talk to that. This comes with additional cost, as well as time when the user needs to interact with these dApps. The other major problem that comes while you get this integrated in your dApp is the security aspect, right? We cannot actually, as like DeFi and app developers, we cannot just tie to one of the solutions. That is, I would not say a very ideal way to do it, because we have seen that some of the most assumed secure bridges have been hacked before, and then most of these bridges have kind of upgradability in them, so you don't even know that, like, let's say if the current version is safe, will you be safe on Reliant? So I think like one more problem that what I've been seeing lately with a lot of cross-chain messaging and bridging app is like they're not opt-in and they're like basically like forced upgrade. And most of the time they do not even bring improvements. And while they upgrade you, while they expose your entire app to cross-chain attacks, right? So you are like, and the thing is, whenever you get like this cross-chain attack, it just not sabotages one network, it sabotages everything that you build around it. And I'm even like sure like going forward, like we would just have like half the number of bridges that we have right now, because the security models that you have to choose there are, and like you have to be really strict because your entire future of your protocol depends upon it. So you have to narrow it down very much, which just leaves very few bridges that you can trust, and aggregation is still not like smooth enough for you to understand which way to go, because you have to bring in advanced monitoring. Like take the Ronin example, like they didn't even know the hack happened like after like 3-4 days, I guess. So the protocols have to be more careful on monitoring, and like which way is going, how the upgrade is happening, what it could mean for us. So there are like a lot of more things to consider while you kind of build cross chain or integrate it natively.
Excellent. Dima and Sarang, you guys offer me a perfect segue into this next question here. Do cross-chain dApps need to be united? In your views, do there need to be agreed upon universal protocols for everything? What are your views on that? And do you have any insights on some additional integrative solutions that you or others are working on right now? Let's see. DJ, would you like to weigh in? Or Dima?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, good. In terms of the solution, I would like to explain a little bit about how AnySwap, multi-chain, and Chainge, Phantom Bridge, we are building. Actually, we're building it on the lowest layer, which is the signature layer. So from our perspective, all the chains, they have one thing in common, is that every public blockchain they use the asymmetric signature algorithm to sign the transaction. That's the reason we want to build the interoperability on this layer, so that everything could be compatible with each other. If we want to connect a non-EVM compatible chain, we don't need something on the logic layer like the smart contract, but we build it on the signature layer. And most of the public blockchains, they use ECDSA or use ED25519 algorithm as their signature algorithm. So if we conquer these two signature algorithms, then we can connect all of those different public blockchains together. So this is what we have done. But I have already seen some other very interesting solutions, like the ZK Sync, ZK Rollup. They use a different way, and trying to pass the messages, encrypted messages, on different chains, so that they can achieve the interoperability. But in terms of the security, I think it will bring more risk if you build it on more large layer. For example, if we look at the past 2 years, most of the cases, the hacking cases, they are just because the improper arrangement in a smart contract. We are everybody in this community. We are a crypto fan. We trust in code, and we basically we trust in math. So I think math is the only thing that is unhackable. That's the reason we want to build it on the encryption layer, on the signature layer, trying to make it safe. Thank you.
Perfect.
Speaking about it,
Dima, go ahead.
Yeah. Your question was about integrative solutions, right? And whether the apps should be united.
Yes.
So I think that absolutely yes, because each app or each dApp specializing in its niche has achieved some perfection in what it's doing, and by adding the experience of another dApp in their sphere, there will be some synergy that will create something more than 1 plus 1 gives 2, right? It will be something more than that. And for that reason, it makes a lot of sense for different dApps to integrate each other. And you are quite right that for that matter, it also makes sense to create some standards so that it's easy for anyone to integrate with anyone else. So that you can, for example, as a wallet, you can simultaneously integrate multiple bridges, multiple DXs, because they're all compatible. And I think eventually, I think one of the speakers already mentioned that it's much easier for the users to use one tool that they're used to, like a wallet, for example, that you can take to any blockchain that you want to interact with. And actually, it's the case that wallets are moving towards that. Even MetaMask, which is very popular in the EVM ecosystem, I've recently learned talking with Algorand that they're going to support Algorand, which is super, super different from EVM, from anything you know about EVM. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Algorand technology, but they're really very different from what you're used to. Like, for example, they have limitations of memory in smart contracts, limitations of memory per single user. If you have an asset, you have to stake tokens to keep it, and so on. And for bridging, it's super. It actually creates a separate vector of attack, because if your smart contract has limited memory, what you can do is you can send so many transactions that you fill this memory, and then your contract gets stuck. So you have to change the entire logic that you are used to having on all the other chains where memory is virtually infinite, and you have to then change everything so that you don't allow the attacker this vector of attack. But still, you can make it compatible with everything else, and that's exactly what we're doing as a bridge. So we still make it possible to send NFTs to and from Algorand in a secure way, even though they have those limitations. Still, they're a fast and a cheap blockchain, and they're very attractive for some projects that we're currently working with. So I completely agree that interoperability is the future for all of us. As far as I understand, at the beginning, most of the blockchains were scared of losing their users if there were many bridges and they could go to another chain. But eventually, the biggest blockchains realized that it's not a threat, it's an opportunity. Imagine all the countries kept their economies only internal. Nobody would trade, right? Whatever you produce, you consume. But what if you produce more than you can consume, right? Or what if you want to use some goods from another country? The same thing happens in the blockchain. It's not, some separate world. It's still something that people do. And on one blockchain, they can make something that you want to have on your blockchain, but because there is no bridge, there's no way to bring it, and it's a problem. So totally integration, even for blockchains that use different protocols, is the future.
Excellent, thank you, Dima. Yeah, that's a fantastic analogy. If you don't mind, I will steal that from you, and I'll definitely credit you when I use that in the future when talking to our community.
If you read a little bit about, if you read our documentation, you'll find more like this.
Perfect. So this is a more pointed question. I'm gonna field this to Sarang first, and then if you guys want, you absolutely feel free to jump in. Now, building cross-chain dexes, why has it not been that popular among the leading players? I know SushiSwap is just now getting into this. Can you give us some insight as to any difficulties from a development perspective, or has it just been a similar trepidation that Dima was just mentioning with cross-chain?
Yeah, I mean, like, first of all, we actually need to define, like, what do we mean by cross-chain DEX? So do we mean like a DEX which just has, like, liquidity on a single chain where all the rest chains could access it? Or do we basically mean DEX deployed on these different chains, and you could basically, like, swap, bridge, and swap? So the later part is something which is, like, very much possible, and Sushi has done that, and you can access that sushi.com/swap, and you could do it right now. But when we talk about, but this still has a problem where that the liquidity is fragmented, and the experience is, let's say, a bit a notch lower than what you could have with like a true native cross-chain DEX. But that still has a lot of problems and game theoretical analysis to be solved before it's actually a reality. As I said before, cross-chain messaging and bridges are not the silver bullet for solving the entire liquidity problem in DeFi, right? There are a lot of difficulties when you have to pair it with DEX, because DEX are mostly momentary, right? So by the time you go on the other chain, because it requires you to time, it requires certain amount of time. So like think of, like, if you are getting like an iPhone cheaper in another country, but it's based on supply and demand. By the time you go and fly to that another country, probably the supply and demand might have changed, and you might not get the same rate, right? So these are, like, few problems that you actually kind of come to when you kind of build, like, a cross-chain native DEX. But there are ways to kind of go around it, but there are other problems that chime in. So let's talk about a bit into how cross-chain MEV would look like, right? So in this case, you're basically announcing that, hey, I'm gonna do a swap and this is my amount. So, and that too, the MEV actually gets a delay. They could actually front run you, and there could be a lot that could go through this. But somehow you still avoid that, and there are ways to do it. So there are these smaller problems which basically kind of group together and make it like not very easy for us to build it. We have internally been running some of the POCs, and recently we are in the process of doing an integration where it basically kind of does like a partial cross chain swap, like a partial true native cross chain swap, where the protocol has just liquidity on one chain, but the users will be swapping from another chain, and they'll be using the liquidity on like the different chain. This sounds cool and fun, right? But there are some caveats where it takes much longer time, and like there is definitely a market for cross-chain DEX. But again, even if you have like a true native cross-chain DEX, you would still need DEXs on different chains, because that would still need like these other DeFi apps have to be composable in the same transactions. Unfortunately, there is like no cross-chain primitive right now that can be cross-chain and also have finality in the same transaction. That's yet for now not possible. So that also limits the amount of things you can do with it. But still, like, it's still a lot big ocean for the apps to build on top of this tech. But again, like it's not that easy for the problems I described. Why not everybody is just like launching a new sushi cross-chain DEX which is native. But we are moving towards that direction for sure. And again, like the security is a big concern, right? Like you do not want this to kind of be built in a bridge that could get hacked in the future, or that has some things that could be exploited in future, because now it just not affects one single chain, it affects every chain, and then it's a problem for everyone. But the solution that SushiSwap uses is basically momentary risk, even if the bridge gets hacked, which is like pretty low security consideration, assumption that the user has to take, rather than LPing into a bridge. And what I actually also see is bridges are gonna get burned, because a lot of tokens that you use right now are upgradable, and they would upgrade to a more cross-chain based kind of architecture, where you can directly use cross-chain messaging to bridge like those bridge like that token from one chain to another. So you would not need a lot of liquidity on these bridges. So probably they are like less honeypot targets for the hackers. So yeah.
Yeah, and just to add, Sarang explained it really in a really brilliant way. And I mentioned before that like having truly decentralized interoperability layer, any protocol may enable or may leverage global accessibility. And whenever I talk to developers, I always say, you guys don't need to deploy your protocol across all the chains. You should follow the application-centric approach. You just should pick the one, because like in 95% cases, all the builders can pick just one chain and then become global accessible. And another 5% relates to projects that build foundational layer of DeFi. Those are projects or like protocols that require to have synchronous compatibility, because like bridging protocols enable asynchronous compatibility, right? And that's sufficient in most cases. But there are many protocols such as DAXs, lending protocols, routers, and liquidity aggregators where synchronous compatibility is required, because in some cases we want to receive price feed from Oracle and then liquidate position in the same block in the same transaction. And that's the main reason why DAXs cannot be cross-chain DAXs, in a sense that like DAX is just deployed in one chain, like the state of the smart contract is stored in one chain, and then any smart contracts from other chains can interact with it, because there is no way to interact like synchronously. And I think we will see DAXs that are deployed like across different chains like Sushi, but still like for foundational layer of DeFi, there is no way to keep the state in a single chain. And I don't think that this problem will be solved in the near future. And that's not a problem at all. Again, like foundational layer will be deployed in every chain where it should be deployed.
Can I also say something? I think that all this industry is in its infancy. And right now, like you said, that game industry catalyzes or pushes forward the technology. Right now, what happens is it's like finance for the sake of finance in the crypto world. But I think eventually, well, because DeFi is basically about reducing control from the governments, from big global entities such as banks and corporations, and about instant transfer of resources from one account to another. Eventually, real economy, like factories, like ports, maybe airlines and other industries, they will eventually understand that using DeFi is much faster, easier, and cheaper than using traditional banks. And then each one of them, like Alex just said, will stick to one or another blockchain because they would think that this blockchain is quick, cheap, secure, convenient, friendly, cooperative, supportive, and so on, whatever the reason, whatever they like. Or maybe because the core team is located in the same country where their core business is located and they can just come and discuss things. And eventually, those DEXs, they will be like the banking system, like the SWIFT that exists right now in the banking system. And then it will make a lot more sense to actually transfer assets from one blockchain to another, more than it happens right now. So this is what I envision will happen eventually.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight. Now, I do want to mention real quick to our audience something that Steve had said earlier. This industry moves very fast. Everyone wears a lot of different hats, has a lot of different responsibilities within their project, and we're already starting to lose some of our panelists today because they have meetings and they have things that they need to attend to. So we are going to do 2 more questions, and then we are going to wrap it up for today because I know you gentlemen are very busy. Again, thank you guys for your time today and your thoughts on cross-chain. So I'm actually going to field a question here from our audience. What is your plans for the bear market if it takes another year or 2 for us to kind of pull out of this downtrend? Are you guys going to just keep focusing on what you're working on and continually engaging with your community and building? Are you guys taking your foot off the gas a little bit, and kind of coasting until things improve? What are your guys' strategies in case we do experience a prolonged downturn in the market?
Collin, I almost laughed when you asked that question, because if you could see the bags under my eyes, you'll see that we're slammed, right? So yeah. So for us, it's been really interesting because during the bull market, we saw everybody and their mother wanting to bridge, right, for all kinds of tokens and coins that you've never heard of, right? And then when the bear market comes, and then you quickly see who the real players are. And these players are the guys who are building for the long term, and they're quickly asking for not just simple token bridging, the conversations that we often start with them, but it's really complex use cases of the general messaging and going across chain. So we're pretty backed up. I think in the earlier part of the chat, I was mentioning about we're adding about 3 chains on average on a monthly basis. And we're in fact prioritizing ruthlessly as much as we can to support these ecosystems, because as members of Celer Network, we're deeply invested into this system. Our team members been teaching free Solidity classes since 2017 and things of that nature. So we want to see this ecosystem grow. So we still have a number of projects in the queue that are very seriously building, really heads down, and so that's sort of the observation that I'm able to see as a bridge provider. In fact, using bridge as a sort of a analogy here is, if you look at the Golden Gate Bridge, where we're right by here in our office, is that one end of the bridge, there's a thriving community of the folks down in the south, and then the other end is another thriving community of ecosystem. Now, if you could kind of imagine that as different layers or destinations, for example, Ethereum or Binance or Polygon, they're blossoming, and there are so many of these projects that are not really getting the limelight now because they're so young, but the use cases that they're bringing is really another step up or two from the ones that we saw last year. And so we're also further encouraged by this. So we're excited to support them, and I think for the entire community will benefit from this as more of these projects come into fruition.
Excellent. Any of you other gentlemen have any input on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I would support my colleague's words. Even though we observe that the token rates are falling, we see more and more demand for bridging, for moving collections between chains, and we help migrate entire collections from one ecosystem to another for various reasons, because one of the systems was hacked, for example, and users are moving somewhere away, and another chain starts growing and gives even grants to the new projects, and projects migrate to that chain because it's very interesting, and they also finance their ecosystems to move their tokens there, and we take active part in that. And we also integrate more and more blockchains, and they seem to become more and more interested in bridges that allow to get assets from other ecosystems. And actually, it's an opportunity. I think that people who use this ecosystem as a way of quickly building money, they maybe will lose something, but those who came here for the long term, they will just use this time for building something better, for polishing their skills in whatever the niche they're taking. Actually, I once worked with a German company, and they never think about things that happen right now. They have a strategy for the nearest 100 years. I'm not exaggerating. And then in this, when your scope of planning is that long, whatever happens right now, whatever the falls and downs, they're like waves in the sea. You don't really care about them, because when you see the big picture, when you look globally, you'll understand where you're going, why you're going, and what you have to do now to get there in 100 years. And then you don't really care whether it's bear market, bull market, doesn't really matter. Just do well what you're doing. Do it so that people like what you're doing, that they can use it, that it's convenient, that it's cheap, that it's reliable, and you don't care about falls and downs and falls. It's not really important. Just think long.
Excellent insight. Thank you. DJ, is there anything you'd like to add, or Sarang?
I would say like
Yeah,
Dima covered. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, DJ.
yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think no matter it's a bear market or bull market, it's just like a cycle. And what we need to think is where should we be at when the next bull market is coming, and what's the next trend for this market. So this is what we are thinking, and we are trying to prepare ourselves and trying to serve the market when it is up. So this is what I see.
Yeah, what I think is like, you won't be able to enjoy the bull without a beer, right? And so, yeah, it's like a good time for us to, look back, introspect, and, kind of think in more an experimental manner of, how we can make things much better, actually move fast without actually having a lot of, baggage or breaking stuff. So I think like this time is like kind of much more useful at the development space, where we basically build the foundation for the next bull cycle to come.
Excellent. Wonderful insight from each of you. Thank you guys very much. At Rubic, we have the same philosophy. Regardless of what the market is doing right now, we see it as an opportunity to continue building, to continue partnering with people, building what it is that we're building, and making it more accessible for businesses to jump into Web3, and for making it easy for new users to interact with Web3, so that they can just jump right in and not have to worry about what chain they need to have assets on, and all of the different intricacies right now that are limiting factors for mass adoption in the space. We are hoping to really provide a comprehensive package that's easy for businesses and for users to interact with Web3. So that brings me to my last question. I'd like to ask each of you what your thoughts are on Rubic, and what it is that we're building, and how you see us as an important aspect of Web3 adoption. DJ, I'll start with you.
I think currently Rubic, I personally have used
they use these tools and how they express that, it would be interesting, and I think a way to for Rubic to differentiate as others, more players come into the space. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Sarang.
Oh, yeah. My internet just got off, so I'm not sure what the question is.
Yes, I was just asking for your thoughts on Rubic and what it is that we're building, and you know how you see us affecting change within the industry.
Oh yeah, I actually have like kind of checked out your protocol, and it was reading through the docs, and it really looks very impressive, and especially like, I would be much more curious to kind of play around much more is like your SDK because it has kind of like a good coverage of different chains that I would love to try and see on what more I can actually play around with it. And I actually love Rubik Cube. So yeah, that's like an innate love for you guys.
Absolutely. Well, if I see you at any future conferences, I'll make sure to give you one of our custom Rubik cubes.
Ah, nice. Love that.
And wrapping up here, Dima, if you could give us your thoughts.
Yeah, well, we also met some Rubic team members on one of the conferences in Dubai, and actually it was Sven, and we had a very lovely conversation during the after party there. So I think Rubic team, they're like very nice guys, and I'm really impressed on how many blockchains and dexes you guys support. There are multiple bridges that you also integrated. And I'm sure I actually see an empty spot on the bottom right corner, and I'm sure this is a spot for XP.network bridge because this would allow you to connect to so many non-EVM chains and bring NFTs to and from those, because we are the only bridge to those chains at the moment. So I'm sure we have a very nice perspective of cooperation.
Absolutely. You know, we have our NFT widget that enables people to purchase multiple NFTs in one go, very similar to like a current eShop. So absolutely, we'll chat more as we go into the weekend for sure.
Yeah, and we have a JavaScript library that allows you to integrate our solution right into your wallet within 1 day probably. Plus testing a bit, so I guess we gotta go for that.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you all so very much for participating today, for lending us your time, and to all of our listeners out there. We had, I think, at max around 1,600 listeners today. We still have over 1,100. So for everyone listening, sincerely thank you for giving us your time today, for being here. And if there are any last minute alpha that any of you gentlemen would like to give to the people listening today, anything you guys are working on, any inside stuff, you're more than welcome to do so right now.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Collin, for a wonderful panel discussion. Everybody, guys who joined here, the speakers, thank you for being so wise and polite and respectful. It was really a pleasure being here with you, and hope to meet you in some conferences in the near future and meet you in person. So thank you for this wonderful panel discussion.
Thank you guys. It was like lovely talking to you, and yep, thanks Collin for having us, and the lovely audience for sticking around for such a long time.
Excellent.
Yeah, likewise, guys. I think it was a fun event, and if any of the projects need anything with bridging support, NFTs, fungibles, or general message passing, come check us out at Celer.network. We'd love to work with you guys. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, everybody, so very much. To those listening today, I'd like to remind you, if you go over to Galaxy, if you sign up for our Discord and our Twitter accounts, and give us a follow on both, you are eligible for an NFT reward today. So again, thank you to all of you listening. Thank you to all of our panelist members, DJ from Chainge Finance, Sarang from SushiSwap, Steve from Celer, Alex from DeBridge, Nick from Symbiosis, Jason from Axelar, and Dima from XP.network. It was a pleasure having all of you guys. I hope this is not the last time I have you gentlemen on to have a panel discussion like this. We're going to try to make this a monthly thing on our end, and I'd love to chat with you more in the future. And I look forward to meeting you guys maybe at a future conference.
Likewise. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. This has been a inaugural opening first episode of our cross-chain Web3 panel series. I have been your host, Collin O'Brien. Thank you all so very much for stopping by. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, stay hydrated, but most importantly, stay cubic. Take care, everyone.